Nicholas in New Jersey, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I have a sort of logical issue with atheism. Well, it may be a non-issue. Maybe you'll tell me that it's a non-issue. But there is the problem of the atheist claims that the theist has the burden of proof entirely, and that he simply just doesn't believe in something. Actually, I'm not sure how you would characterize it, but in any case, the atheist claims to sort of have a vacuous position. There's no content position, and therefore the burden of proof does not fall on him.
Well, it's. I would put it as a null hypothesis, basically.
And it does depend on the atheist.
Yeah, I mean, some people claim to have absolute certainty that there is no God. I happen not to be one of them, but there are some.
Okay. But traditionally, sort of, atheism has had a strategic advantage in the sense that the theist is, in fact, making an existential claim. He's saying that there is something that exists, and therefore, some evidence is required. And the atheist, in many cases, is not making an existential claim, and therefore doesn't require evidence for his position. Mm-hmm. But this doesn't seem to sit right with me. The reason being that, I guess I'm a stalwart of two-valued logic, right? If you have a proposition, God exists, and you negate that proposition, and you say that the negation of the proposition is true, then the original proposition has to be false. In other words,
correct.
You are making a claim. You are saying that.
Yes, that person you just described is making a claim. I would agree.
Okay, so how would you characterize? How would you evade that particular objection?
I think, though, what's happening is what you're calling negation. It does occur. There are atheists that would negate that God exists. There are others who simply say they don't accept that.
All right. I'm going to ask you something.
Well, that's strictly speaking nonsense, though. I mean, you have a proposition. Okay, for example, I could say...
Let me give you another example.
Let's let him talk for a minute.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Are you letting me talk?
Yes,
go
please,
ahead.
please go ahead.
Okay. So, I mean, I could say, I'm an agnostic about whether or not there's an odd number of blades of grass in my yard right now. But the fact of the matter is that, there's either an odd number or there's not an odd number.
Correct.
It's okay to be an agnostic, but to take a stronger position than agnosticism, would, in my view, be atheism, and that would be...
Well, wait a minute. Atheism and agnosticism are not mutually exclusive positions, and neither is theism and agnosticism. You can be an agnostic theist or an agnostic atheist. It's not like they're not on the same line.
Well, you could be a doxastic theist, for example, and then you could be like an axiological atheist. So you could.
Right, but I mean, I think you're trying to pigeonhole atheism into something that we don't agree with, because I'm an atheist, and I don't say I know for sure there is no God. I just say
I don't believe there is.
I don't have a belief. Just like I would say I don't have a belief that there are an even number of blades of grass in your yard. There could be, but I'd like somebody to actually do the work of counting them before I commit to one belief.
The point is, you can say, I don't believe there is an odd number of blades of grass in your yard, but I also don't believe there is an even number. I have no belief on this issue because we don't know, and I see no reason to put a bet on it. Like, I don't see a reason to make a belief. I don't see a reason to assert either is true when I can wait for the information.
I guess it depends on how seriously you take two-valued logic. I mean, I think that, if you're a realist and you maintain the principle of bivalence, you don't just believe, but you know that there's either an even or odd number of blades.
Correct. No, that is correct.
Yeah, and just the same way, I know that there's either a God or there's no God. But where I diverge from a theist is that the theist doesn't say, I know one or the other is true. The theist says, I know for sure, or, I have a firm belief that there is a God.
I would like to go ahead.
I don't have that.
Can I just stick with this blades of grass? I think the blades of grass thing is fine. If you were to say to me, there's an odd number of blades of grass in my yard, and I say, How could you possibly make that claim? I don't believe you. And you say, oh, so then you're saying there's an even number. Well, that's completely misrepresenting what I just said. Just because I don't believe you that there is an odd number, it doesn't mean, I mean, you haven't made your case. You haven't supported that claim, and you haven't demonstrated to me how you know or how you could know that there's an odd number of blades of grass in your yard. So when I say I don't accept that claim because it's not supported, that certainly doesn't mean that I'm now claiming there's an even number.
Well, no, I think there's a slight misunderstanding. I'm not saying that if you reject, if you say I don't know, then you automatically...
No, I'm saying I don't believe it. I don't accept as true that there is an odd number of blades of grass because I have no reason to accept it's true.
But it could be true. Okay, so there's a couple issues here. One is that it could be true independently of whether or not you suspend belief.
Correct,
yes,
but I have no reason to believe it, so I don't. You've given me no reason to believe it. You've simply asserted it without evidence.
Can I give
I
you
didn't
a more...
assert it. I think that's
I'm not talking about a theist in the example. So a theist says God exists. I believe that God exists. They say, I accept it as true that there are an odd number of blades of grass in the yard. And I'm saying, I don't know why you accept that as true. How would you even know? Why would you assert that either it's true that there's an odd or an even number? I don't accept either as true because we'd have to figure it out.
I mean, there's no other possibility. It has to be odd or even.
Right, but I don't have to believe that it's true that there is an odd number, and I don't have to believe that it's true that there's an even number. I can say I don't believe either because there's not sufficient evidence to demonstrate it one way or another.
Right, and I didn't say you had to believe one or the other.
Right, and if I don't believe there's an odd number, and we're using that as an analogy for God exists, that makes me an atheist, but I certainly haven't asserted a claim of my own.
I guess, hold on, if I may interject. I think that you're maybe a little confused about why I brought up the odd and even example.
Okay.
Not to say that, not to sort of bulldoze you into a certain position, but just to say that the proposition that there is an odd number of blades of grass in my yard right now has to be either true or false.
Correct.
There's no truth value in between those.
Correct.
Similarly, the proposition God exists has to be true or false.
Correct.
Now, if you want to be an agnostic and completely suspend belief, then I doff.
Well, but agnosticism is not about belief. That's what I'm trying to say. You keep bringing agnosticism into it. There's no reason to do that. We're talking about atheism and theism. So what I'm saying...
But that's precisely, you're begging the question. That's precisely what I'm saying, is you're mischaracterizing the atheist position.
Can I actually...
No, but an atheist, would you agree that an atheist is someone who does not believe a God exists?
I would say that an atheist is somebody who accepts the negation of the proposition God exists.
So if somebody does not believe a God exists, you're saying that's not an atheist?
Because you're looking at it from a psychological point of view regarding belief.
No, I'm saying that by definition...
I'm looking at it from a logical point of view.
I'm saying that if you ask, even by common definition, if I ask people, is an atheist somebody who doesn't believe a God exists, most people are going to be okay with that.
Yeah,
excuse me, I haven't gotten to talk for a while. I'm talking now. I would like to change up the analogy a little bit because one blade of grass or another, I mean, whether there's an even number or an odd number is not a very complicated proposition. I'd like to switch up the analogy. Have you received some of those emails that say that there's like a Nigerian prince who's died and left you millions of dollars?
Is he on?
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, you're on. You're on the air, Nicholas. Go ahead.
Have I received one of those? Fortunately, no.
No, but you've heard of them, right? They send you mails saying, like, you won $9 million in the English lottery or something, right here to claim your prize. I mean, it's spam. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, well, if you received one of those messages, would you believe that you were the long-lost relative of this Nigerian prince who was promising to give you, like, millions of dollars, no strings attached?
Probably not, but the proposition would still have to be either true or false.
Right, but the fact that you believe that you don't believe in this Nigerian prince doesn't mean that you've conclusively proven that that prince doesn't exist and that you're not his relative, right?
Right.
Right. So you're taking a position of basically tentative disbelief, which is I do not believe in the presence of these millions of dollars. Yes, these millions of dollars either exist or do not exist and are owed to me or not owed to me.
Yeah.
But I don't believe it because I don't have a good reason to trust this guy, right?
I believe that in that case I would not believe it, but not because I have evidence one way or the other, simply because from the point of view of, like a game theoretic point of view, I have a lot to lose and potentially very little to gain.
Well, and essentially, I mean, it doesn't even have to do with gaining or losing things. We could, I mean, in fact, you do have quite a lot to gain if this claim is true.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, if the claim is true, but again, I don't have evidence one way or the other, so I can't assign a large probability to my acquiring that money.
So give that man a prize. That is exactly the atheist position. It's not, I am certain there is no God. It's, there's either a God or there's not, but this is a pretty unlikely thing to claim, and I'm not going to take the position of believing it. Just like the Nigerian prince. That's what we're saying.
Now you've gone a step further, and you've outdone yourself, because now you've claimed that it's a pretty unlikely claim. I don't pretend to know one way or the other. I'm not an agnostic, but I would say that
Well, how would you determine if it's likely or not? If you cared about that question.
Precisely. That's precisely my point. Is that I don't know why you would make that additional claim.
But how would you assign some kind of positive likelihood to it? I mean, in a vacuum, without having any evidence, you don't have any reason to think that something is likely to be true.
Well, I think you are committing, there's a problem there in that reasoning, namely that just because you don't have evidence for an ontological claim, like something exists, like God, that there could be no reason for believing it. Of course, there could be reasons. They just wouldn't be.
Okay, what are they?
Wait, they wouldn't be what?
What?
They just wouldn't be the sort of reasons that would be acceptable, for example, in a scientific framework.
So they wouldn't be good reasons.
No, actually, you're doing a disservice to the sciences by saying that, because you have to understand the limitations of science in order to use science properly.
So what would be a limitation of science that you would use in trying to determine if something exists?
What would be an example of a good non-scientific reason to believe something is more to the point.
Right, yeah, I think that is a better way of stating it.
Yeah, so belief in something, and I'm not saying that this is my position, but I could understand it. Belief in something could be because you have a lot of worldly evidence. You've gone around and you've gathered all of this evidence, but there could be other kinds.
Wait, what kind of worldly? Wait, what sort of worldly evidence wouldn't be testable?
Well, look, I'm trying to get away from that. I'm saying that's one way that you could approach it.
You
could approach it scientifically. You could accumulate data.
What kind of reasons would be unscientific reasons that would be good reasons to believe that a thing exists?
I would like to answer you if you let me. So a belief could pivot, for example, on wishful thinking, on a desire.
That's not a good reason.
Well, let me finish. The reason that I say that is because what is rational for a human being to do is what promotes his welfare, what maximizes his welfare. And a person's welfare is not just contingent on going around asking scientific questions. It's also contingent on asking questions which are important outside of science, maybe on a spiritual level. And somebody could you'd have to do the studying here. I haven't done the studies. I don't have the data. But
wait, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I understand I'm interrupting you. But you used a word that I don't understand. You said on a spiritual level, and I need spiritual defined for me.
Well, I have no interest in defining it because I don't know what it means myself. But some people.
Then I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, look, we can both understand this. Some people claim that they're spiritual, and some people.
And I don't know what they mean.
I don't know what they mean either.
Okay, so they're talking nonsense, is what we're saying.
Well, then we could go the Lewis Carroll route and say that if it has no meaning, then it saves us the world of trouble because we don't have to find meaning in it. But
that's what I'm getting to think about this call.
If the good reason for belief outside of science is nonsense, then, yeah, I don't know what the point is of going further with this.
I'm sorry. You can call back in another time. It's just we're running out of time, and we don't want to take it all up with this one call.